All right, so the next thing I wanted to mention is another way besides the powers that are listed in the John T. Diaries. This is something that Scott Stenwick has mentioned in his book. So again, his book is pretty valuable, especially if you're like, not necessarily completely beginning magician, but somebody who's maybe getting into this, maybe approaching intermediate or an intermediate level magician. I would say look to his book because it'll give you a lot of good overall information. And one of the things he points out, and I'm not, letting the cat out of the bag, he's mentioned this in podcasts, is that you can use the kings for Sephirotic work. Now, what do I mean by Sephirotic? I will give you a quick Kabbalah primer and then explain what you would use them for. Okay, so this is my little diagram, and I've made two diagrams here. So this is basically, you might have come across this if you're working the, kind of a Golden Dawn style system. Basically, some kind of Hermetic Kabbalah system such as that. And this is basically what's known as the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. So each of these circles here, they're actually, representing Sephirot, which is the plural of the word, Hebrew word Sephira. And I'm just doing an English transliteration here. But you would use this. So, okay, so let me explain what this is. Hang on. So here, the idea is that here we're basically at Earth, right? We're on planet Earth, and we're in the realm of the four elements, fire, earth, air, water. And this is, where we're using basically this same idea of, and this could be just like a, a platonic idea, right? It doesn't have to be literal fire, literal air or water. But it could be like, emotional, we think of somebody being very watery, then we think of them as having more emotions. Fiery, we talk about a fiery personality. Somebody's maybe hot-headed, but also ambitious and driven, airy. We have these words. And so you can think of them just at that abstract level, okay? But at any rate, this is considered the lowest level. And up here going through, I haven't given the labels of all of these, but really quickly, this would be the Sephira of Keter. This would be the one of Chokmah. This is the one of Bina, etc. Gibura Gedula, or Chesed, as it's sometimes known. Tiferet, Hod, Netzach, Yesod, and Atzilut, which is Malkut. Sorry. So Malkut. Okay. Now, you'll see a lot of this come up in different ways, different places, but this is all basically, accepting, Saturn here for a second, you can see really clearly, okay, we have Mars, we have Jupiter, we have, the sun. It's almost a one-to-one lifting from this, except Saturn, and I'll get to why in a second. So the idea is, so what is all of this? So, and I'm going to be careful here because, some people it's just consciousness, bro. And there is a big argument to be made that, yeah, if you ascend these aethers, then you're getting into more and more higher and higher levels of consciousness. But the real trick here is that you're basically incorporating more of the actual worlds of creation and formation and action, as well as emanation from the divine as you go along your path, okay? So in so doing, you gain more and more abilities to really integrate yourself with the universe. Okay, so your consciousness, your whole body, your whole chakra system becomes a vehicle for the divine and more closely aligned with the divine, and you can sort of integrate yourself more and more with the divine. Okay, so that's like a really, really oversimplified version of what happens when you're going along a Western magical path, that, a Hermetic path. And this is just one of them, and this is just one model. The whole of the Kabbalah, if you reduce it to this, get out of here. Go somewhere else with that. Okay, this is just what a lot of colonial type people have done, but it's still used a lot, which is why I'm pointing to it like this. Okay, so you'll see this. This diagram is actually associated from the Golden Dawn ritual known as the Lesser Ritual of the Hexagram. And the whole idea is that you can use it to basically make yourself more and more aligned with whatever it is you want to work with, right? Let's say you want more Jupiter in your life. Well, you do a ritual and it goes boom, 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 and then, etc. You would go boom, 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 like that. You would do the whole thing. And you can find how to do this online. But that is not what I'm here to tell you about, okay? Now, obviously, if you're working with planetary magic, this is what would happen, right? You would be doing similar kinds of things, using Enochian if you're doing the Lesser Ritual of the Hexagram. I would argue that this might potentially make it unnecessary to do those things, but do both. Learn both, okay? Why not? What do you have to lose? So, okay, now what would you, so I'm bringing in, but what would you actually use this for, and how does this relate to the Aethers? So the Aethers can be thought of as sort of overlapping as you go along. You get higher and higher and higher through the Aethers. It's the similar, you gain, the model basically is saying that you gain the same kind of consciousness going up through the Aethers as you would if you made an effort to attune your consciousness to each of these Sephira, okay? Now, I've stopped here at Saturn because there are no more classical planets that Enochian would have worked with, okay? But I do make this point here that you are actually getting, if you get to the highest of the Aethers, you're actually crossing this point and you're integrating your consciousness with the whole, okay? Now, I've given different models and I try to walk people through this, and it's like, I don't have a perfect model for this, but what I do want to say is that as you go through the Aethers, you can basically be thought of as integrating more and more of your consciousness, and you can either map the zodiac on here, you can map planets on here, you can map Sephirot on here. All I'm trying to say is that you integrate more and more and more consciousness as you go. Now, that's just one thing, and then other idea. The larger idea is that basically, as you do that, you become more and more integrated with the process of reality. Okay, your being becomes integrated with it, and that's all I can really speak to it without really getting lost in this whole idea of supernals and stuff like that. Now, how does this relate to the heptarchy and all of these kings and all of these princes? What does this have to do with that? Well, it's helpful that this model, as limited as it is, right? Every model is going to be limiting to some extent, but it's helpful to know that, okay, we've got the moon down here. I wonder if I can call King Blue Mesa down here to help me out here. Or I've got Mercury here. I wonder if I can call King Benaspol. That's Mercury. You're gonna have to look this up. You're gonna have to memorize it on your own to help with Mercury and Balagon and Bobogel and Babalel and Binapur and King Benapsen to get all of these to work with me on these things, right? And basically, if Scott Stenwick's assertion is true, and I think it is, then basically you can tag team, basically, right? Not only are you going to, let's say, call on the Aether of Bag and the Aether of Rye, but beforehand you can have called on the King Blue Mesa here to help you out, to say, hey, in addition to me working these Aethers and everything else I'm going to ask you for, because, I'm a human being with needs, but would you please also help me to have as full of an experience and as helpful and foundational experience, because this is the Aether of Yesod, which is ruled by the moon or complemented by the moon, depending on how you look at it. I prefer complemented. can you please help me so that this can become a good foundation and lead to the progression of the further aethers? And maybe he'll have some requirements for you to do that, okay? I'm not saying nothing is easy, but at least he will enable you, even if that enabling includes telling you something else that you need to do, because then you are then enabled to do that extra thing and then move on, right? So you can do all of this, okay? Now, I've added some labels here. I do recommend before you get to the Aether of Zaxxon, the Aether of Eek is the one right below this, that you do contact me if you get, as you're about to do the Aether of Eek, because I have special instructions for you, but I pretty much only get to that, you know, a handful of people get to there, but and I just tell them, okay, wait, you could call me up before you do that, because I have some things that you'll want to think about. And then the Aether of Zip is basically here, and that's when, you know, you have the vision of the Daughter of Fortitude or Babylon, depending on what it is, you know, what model you're using, etc. I prefer the Daughter of Fortitude, etc. So, and then here you have Divine Union. He said very, you know, matter-of-factly. So you have Divine Union in the Aether of Lil. So that's it. That's me sort of going through this whole thing, what you would use. And I don't want you to think that the only way you can use the Heptarchy is for Sephirotic stuff. You can use it for practical things. And for the most part, I have not found any problems working with the angels as far as a practical thing. Does it always work? No. Sometimes you have to do the hard thing, right? Sometimes you have to figure out, let's say financially, you have to figure out what's the hole in your boat, right? Are you spending too much, or whatever the case may be, right? Sometimes it's the thing that's unattractive, but you have to do it anyway. So, but regardless, the angels do provide help, and I've just seen it happen too many times. So that's it. So I wanted to point that out, though, because some of you are going to be like, okay, I got so far in the Aethers and it didn't keep working. What happened? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe the angels have additional information for you. So good luck. If you have any questions, let me know. So this is kind of like basically a part 2 that is actually kind of brief. So one is kind of an overview, and then the other one is some of the stuff. So I'll just quickly run down, generally speaking, what some of the angels are good for. King Blizzstone is said to be especially powerful in the earth, the physical earth. Bethaphes, so, and by the way, you know, this may be one that there's a typo in a certain book you might get. King Binapur is said to have new knowledge of a new government. He's basically considered like pretty much close to the divine in terms of the amount of power he has. So King Baligon, you know, is associated with Venus. There's a reason there's that phrase, love conquers all, that sort of thing. And he's associated with all that can be wrought in aerial actions. So that would be a good idea if, let's say, you were taking a flight somewhere, in addition to maybe the angels of transportation, get both of them on your side. You know, why not? Or if you're, let's say, into rockets, you know, that sort of thing. Again, these are just like some ideas about things you could use. So there's a long list of powers. So the main idea is find the power that you're interested in that is especially helpful to you in the moment, and then call on the angels. You know, use the call to the Aether. Use calls 1 and 2, the Enochian calls. I might have said the call to the Aethers earlier. Oh well, calls 1 and 2 that basically start off Olson Forge, which is, you know, I reign over you, saith the God of justice in righteousness, etc., etc. And then call 2, which is Ach die Peazong Om Fe Absolved, which is basically, can the wings of the winds understand, etc., etc., O you, the second of the first. There's very kind of semi-demiurgic content when it comes with that. So this whole idea of the 1, and then the 2 that proceeds from the 1, a lot of that going on in Enochian. And it's really interesting. I'm not going to say it's like demiurgic per se, because some people are like, oh, is it Gnostic? I don't think it is, really. I think there's a lot of Platonism that a lot of mainstream Christianity kind of overlooks. Okay, so you would use them for that. They have other things associated with them. I mentioned King Bobogel. He's associated with wisdom, and so on and so forth. Read the diaries. There are some mistakes that I've seen in print, not major ones, but enough to say, okay, I kind of got to go back to the source. But start off just using whatever. So the errors I've seen are Blizdon and Binapore switched up. So make sure that you've got the right thing there if you're going to explore this system. But yeah, ask for help, ask for information. King Karmara, by the way, and Hagonel, those are angels who are really good at switching out switching up which angel can be used when. So the main time you're supposed to use the angels, sorry, one more thing, always one more thing. So to sum up, make calls 1 and 2, then do the, and you'll do the invocation of the angels, but you need to plan when you're doing these calls. So King Bobogel on Sunday, or Bobogel on Sunday, is the angel of the sun, so done on Sunday. Baligon is angel of Venus, our angelic king of Venus, so he is done on Friday, etc., etc. So know your planetary days, but then you're also supposed to use the planetary hours for the kings, but the following, it's complicated. Just get Scott Stenwick's book. You're supposed to use, for example, though, for Prince Bornogo, you're actually supposed to do it during the hour of Venus. Okay, so you're basically according to that diagram that I showed you earlier, that circular one. So at any rate, if you have any questions, let me know. You can email me through either post something in the comments, or you can just email me through Enochian.today, whatever experience you have going on, or any questions you have about the system. I'm always happy to answer. I clearly am very enthusiastic about the system. So yeah. So, okay. And yeah, I think Aaron Leach, he associates the ministers of Karmara and Hagonel with the moon. I didn't really see that from my research. So, that's the only other thing that I would say. He's otherwise really good. His essentially Enochian Grimoire, it is very thorough, and Scott Stenwick's is very usable. So between the two of them, you should have Scott Stenwick's books are pretty usable. So between the two of them, if you study, read hard, all that, you should, and I'll put the links to those in the notes as well. Between the two of those authors, and maybe even Lon Milo Duquette, I'll throw that in there as well. You should have a pretty good foundation. Hopefully those books aren't worth too much right now. I'll also put Christopher Whitby's book in the description, and we'll also probably throw in Stephen Skinner's. You can go really deep on this. I have limited myself. I said no more, and the only purchase I've made recently is just the newer edition of Lon Milo Duquette's book. I'll double check it for errors, but yeah. So anyway, you know who this is. Thanks so much for watching. And again, if you have any questions, reach out. Okay, bye.